Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fan Sports New York Varsity. I'm your host, Frank Langella, joined by my co-host, Marcilio Langella. And Mars, this is our playoff show for Section 1 football. We're going to be covering all the classes. We're into the semifinal rounds for AA, A, B, and C. D has already been decided. The Hudson Valley Football League has already been decided, and congratulations to Greeley on winning the championship there. But Mars, we're getting to the big game, deciding who's going to be playing in the sectional championship. This is obviously a colossal moment for a lot of kids and coaches and programs this weekend.
I mean, I completely agree. I think this is like, for a lot of these kids, you were, dreaming of this moment for a while, being able to make to the sectional championship, especially with COVID happening, the COVID season happening, and a lot of kids missed out on that. I feel like everyone, not even just the schools, the coaches, the kids, the parents, the communities, I think everyone is itching to see who's going to make it to the section championship, and, I'm just ready to roll.
Absolutely. And I want to welcome our fans. We appreciate you guys for tuning in each week. Obviously, if you just started by, watching the show now, better late than never. But you can, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you guys give a thumbs up on the video. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. You can get all our content at fansportsny.com. You can follow all our social media accounts on the screen. And it's been a tremendous season. We're going to continue on to the end of the season in the section title. But how it's going to work, Mars, and I talked about it before, we're going to go through all the semifinal games. We're going to preview each of them, and then we're going to pick the games at the end. So let's just dive right into it at this point. We know all the teams. Let's start with AA. And the first game I want to talk about is Arlington 6-2 at New Rochelle, who's 7-1. And historically, New Rochelle is 3-1 versus Arlington. They have won 2 straight. The last time they played was in 2019. And let's start with Arlington. Last week in the quarterfinals, they won 21-8 versus White Plains. They've advanced now to the semifinals the 4th time in the last 6 seasons. So Coach Morano, again, has done a pretty good job. I mean, they've taken it up a notch from this coaching staff, in this program compared to the, Arlington the previous 10 years. I mean, we talked about it before, the work that they've done. They've made a consistent contender in Arlington, and they deserve a lot of kudos for that. I mean, Arlington is a really big school, and it's a nice story for them. This was a team that had a lot of young guys on it, a bunch of, some senior presence, but there was a bunch of, they graduated a bunch of players. So this is a pretty nice moment for them. And offensively, you've seen they're on a 5-game winning streak, Mars, and both sides of the ball has really stepped up. And to me, the biggest step up is offensively. And they've scored 21-plus points now in 5 straight games. And we know the identity of this offense is power running football, right? With that offensive line that continues to impose their will. To me, when we talked about the Hog Molly report, offensive lineman report last week, that Arlington, in my opinion, was the number 2 offensive line in this class, and they have continued to grow, and they will rely on this group again this time around. I think, again, the New Rochelle hasn't lost a lot, right? But the last 2 losses that they've had, the formula is out, right? So we've seen it suffering. We've seen versus Carmel, teams that can control the line of scrimmage and run with power, Mars, and control the clock, to me, have the best opportunity to beat New Rochelle until I see otherwise, right? And I think Arlington has an opportunity, has a formula that could work. And it's relying on that offensive line, relying on these running backs who can run through contact, which is really important. You need to get those hard, grinded out runs. And guys like Lynch, guys like Chaffee, who had a touchdown last week, I think he's now had a touchdown in 5 straight games. And bringing in their fullback like Nieves, who I've talked about a bunch of times on the show as a blocker and a runner. And they're going to bring in their tight end. You're going to see him in the eye. You're going to see him in, come out in some spread looks, but I would imagine you're going to see a lot of heavy looks to run the football downhill and control the clock. But again, they can also run out of the spread, right? So they can go into the spread. I also think the offense has skyrocketed with the improved play of their quarterback, Resigno. He had 2 passing touchdowns last week, 4 touchdowns now in the last 2 weeks, Mars. This is a young man who is really maturing before our eyes as a quarterback, and you can see he's getting better as the season goes along. But now this is going to be his biggest test, right? On the road in New Rochelle versus the speed of New Rochelle. This is definitely a step up in competition and a step up in pressure. So I'm interested to see how that young man plays. He had 1 passing touchdown to Justin Crudis, number 18. And we obviously know about Ian Griffin, who he is their biggest X-factor playmaker guy who can line up in multiple spots. And I would imagine New Rochelle is going to try and fill the box with bodies. So the passing game, I think, can be there, especially the play-action passing game. Because if you can run the football, that opens that up. And a guy like Ian Griffin, who's going to get one-on-one coverage at times, you got to take advantage of that opportunity. Because then that's when those big plays can happen. I do think they're going to have to hit a couple big plays. I think the formula, again, running with power, play action, and protecting the football offensively. I think that should be Arlington's big take going into this game. Defensively, though, Mars, they've also been pretty solid. 14 or less points allowed in 5 straight games. New Rochelle has started to develop a power running game. So, again, earlier in the season, I didn't really see that power running game in New Rochelle. They're really starting to develop that. So expecting to see some tight end wing power running football. But also some of the Wildcat stuff with Chris Tuck. So Arlington's got to be prepared for that. I'm curious to see the quarterback health of New Rochelle because that could definitely change things. But these guys have weapons out on the edge. They got to protect the C-gap and out because that's where New Rochelle likes to attack. So how is this secondary and these edge defenders going to hold up both in the run and in the passing game? I know Newman had an INT last week. This secondary is going to be tested. I thought they did a pretty solid job last week against a good wide receiver core in White Plains. And the way you can help your secondary is by getting pressure on the quarterback. So I'm interested to see the health of New Rochelle's quarterback is going to be a big indicator on whether they're going to rely more heavily on the run or try to throw the ball a little bit because Arlington's got some big guys up front. When I go to New Rochelle, Mars, in the quarterfinals, they won 21-14 in double overtime versus Clarkstown South. Really good game. And I know, we talked about this last week that people were worried that New Rochelle was, it was bleak, that New Rochelle isn't the same, right? But they won a big playoff game at home. And I know that their standards are section title and state title. So I always love having high standards. So I do understand that. But again, New Rochelle is not falling off. They're still a very competitive team offensively. They got a little bit banged up, right? Brandon was hurt. Their running back. Their quarterback, Luzzy, got hurt. Don't know his status. Their backup quarterback, Jair Redding, had to come in. And I'm interested to see how the game plan will switch if Luzzy's not back. If he is back, obviously, you want to have a balanced attack. I think they're going to have to rely, especially if the backup quarterback's in, on this offensive line, guys like Eli Pierre, Gagliardo, Benitez, and running the ball with Chris Tuck, which last week, Mars, had 35 carries, 233 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He has really been a beacon of light for this offense and developing that power running football scheme that I talked about. And I do think you're going to see some heavy looks. They're going to bring in their tight ends like Braga. You're going to see some tight end wing. You're going to see some Wildcat. But I do think that it's, attacking inside the tackle box is not going to be very successful against the size of Arlington, but attacking from the C-gap out, I think is where they're going to go and try to get one of these skill guys to make a big play. Guys like Santiago and Nico Andrews. Santiago had a touchdown reception. Nico Andrews is New Rochelle's biggest X factor. He had a passing touchdown, Mars. This is a guy who can do a little bit of everything. Expect some jet sweeps. Expect some play action passes to them. Defensively, can they stop the power running game? So I'm looking at the defensive line and linebackers, guys like Benitez and Braga, and a guy like Rhett up front who are going to have to make plays against this power running football team. And last week, Mars, they gave up a couple big pass plays in the passing game, the Clarkstown South. Arlington is not as fast at the wide receiver spot outside of Ian Griffin, but the play action game could be pretty potent if they get that guy in space. I know their defensive back, Jamal Williams, had the big INT for New Rochelle in overtime to seal the game. But they got to bottle up Ian Griffin, and you might have to go man-to-man with him if they start running the football with some power. So I'm interested to see, can New Rochelle force some turnovers? They have done a really good job of that the last few weeks, giving their offense extra possessions. Mars, what do you want to talk about on this one?
Yeah, this is definitely an interesting game because I've been touting Arlington as a possible offensive powerhouse this whole season. That was my pick in the beginning of the season, who I thought was going to be the number 2 offense overall, and they've really been showing it in the past few games. The fact that they've been having, at least 21-plus points in each of their 5 wins that they've had in a row, I think that this offensive line is really coming alive, right? They've really been dominating up front, and really that's what's been the engine of this offense because because you obviously have some playmakers that can really make a lot of plays, like Lynch and Shafee have been really key to the success when it comes to making those big plays. And then obviously the play of Resigno at quarterback has been awesome, right? And I think that Arlington's becoming more of a well-balanced machine, because you have the playmakers that can run the ball and heavy looks, and then you have Resigno, who's just been dual threat, been really just growing, like you said, maturing in front of our eyes, and really just been expanding his field of play. And when you look at what Arlington needs to do, the offensive line really needs to grind this game away, right? Like you said, the biggest weakness that New Rochelle has right now is the time of possession. If you can keep their offense off the field, then that means you can really wear them down, really force them to have to make big plays constantly in order to keep up, right? If you can wear them down, make them draw in for the run, and then hit them with a play action pass, that can really stun them, right? And I think that you said already that the fact that New Rochelle secondary had some issues last week, and I feel like maybe that's something that Arlington would look into in this game. Defensively, I mean, they've been playing just as good. I mean, the fact that they have less than 14 plus points per game in their game, the games that they won 5 straight in a row, that's also impressive. The question is going to be, can their front contain all the speed that New Rochelle has? Because we all know that New Rochelle is going to try to get to the outside.
Yep.
And if Arlington's defense can contain and put all of New Rochelle's backs, funnel them into the big boys up front, then that's going to be something that defense, then they'll give them a chance. I mean, the secondary is going to be tested, that's for sure. Yeah. But if you can contain the run, force everything inside, then Arlington has a chance on both sides of the ball. In New Rochelle, I mean, you had a really tough game against South, and the South gave you a fight to the second overtime. You pulled off a big win, and as much as, and I agree with you, the fact that everyone says, well, this is not the same New Rochelle team. Well, guess what? They won a playoff game at home against a good opponent, and that's a big deal.
Now they're playing another one.
The question is going to be, what's going to be with the quarterback situation? What's going to happen there? Are they going to have the back go in or not? And how much of the offense will change because of that? Obviously, you're going to have to rely on Tuck. You're going to have to rely on your skill players to make big plays, no matter who it is. And I think the most important thing, New Rochelle's got to get to the outside. You have to get your playmakers out in space, and hopefully you can make a big play. Your speed is what kills. New Rochelle speed is top notch. I mean, we already know this. New Rochelle's always had top notch speed. So the question is going to be, can you break contain, and can you try to win those one-on-one matchups against Arlington secondary? Because you know what? I think Arlington's going to realize that you're going to try to get to the outside and runs. So when you do the pass, can your athletes beat their secondary athletes? And I'm wondering, if they could do that, then I think they'll have a chance. Defensively, they're really tough. I mean, defensively, they've always been a good defense. New Rochelle, that's like one of the key factors of what makes them successful. But the question is going to be, can their front match Arlington's front? I feel like that's going to be what I look at the most in this game. Can New Rochelle's defensive line match Arlington's offensive line?
Yeah, man, and the players to watch. I'm going to look at the running backs, Mars. Aiden Shafee of Arlington. Again, he's had a touchdown in 5 straight, I believe. This is a guy who can get involved in the passing game, run through contact. He's going to be an important cog. And Chris Tuck, who has been so good for New Rochelle these last couple weeks on offense and defense. Both sides of the ball is going to have to play big on this one, especially with the questions at the quarterback spot. The matchup, Marcy took the words right out of my mouth. It's this Arlington offensive line versus New Rochelle's front seven. To me, is going to be a strong indicator where this is going to go, honestly. Let's go to the other AA matchup, Mars. Suffern 6-2 at Carmel, who's 8-1. This is a rematch of Week 6, where Carmel won 31-7. And let's start with Suffern. The last time, Mars, they won a playoff game, this is how important last week, was 2011, right? I think it was 2011 was the last time Suffern won a playoff game. So last week was a big important one when they won versus Mamaroneck 19-10. And when you come into this game offensively, last time they played Carmel, they only had 109 yards of offense the entire game, and 79 of them came off a Samson Joseph run. So to me, last week, or this time around, the offensive line, last week the offensive line played really strong. I mean, they had over 220 yards rushing last week. Don Dorselli, he had 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, but I did see him go down towards the end of the game. Don't know his question, because that is a big-time player for them, running the football with power. And Diamante Desir, he had 70 yards and a touchdown. So you had an offense that rushed over 220 yards. The offensive line this time around versus Carmel has to be better. I thought they stepped up, led the way by Krebs and that crew, but they have to step up this time around. There was way too much penetration. They had way too difficult of a time running the football versus this Carmel front. So they definitely have to be better. And this pass attack has to get going. You're not going to be able to run. I will say this. They're not going to run over 220 yards versus Carmel. That I could tell you. But if they can get over 100 yards rushing, and can this pass attack make a couple big plays, especially in play action? Can they get the ball out to Dylan Yang and versus this aggressive defense? This defense flies to the football. You have to use their aggressiveness against them and make sure they respect the pass. I just don't feel like they respected it enough last time they played, and it has to start this time around. Defensively, Mars, I think this defense is going to have to lead the way if they're going to pull this upset. This has been a pretty strong unit. They've been really strong in the red zone. They've given up yards, but they have prevented points, which is the big thing. There's a lot of people like using the bend but don't break defense, right? There are times that you can't bend, but as long as you're keeping them out of the end zone, it's a win for the defense. So to me, Carmel is going to move the ball, right? But can you prevent them from getting into the end zone is going to be big. And try to keep them out of field goal range because they have a kicker who can get them points. So the big thing is to get points off the board. And to me, they have to create some negative plays. And it's got to be led the way by their defensive line and Krebs and Yang. By last week, they had 4 tackles for loss and 2 sacks. They got to create negative plays and get Carmel into more spread looks. They could still be successful out of the spread, but you want them more in spread looks where your defensive backs and linebackers who have speed, they can try to stunt and blitz and get to the quarterback, and maybe one of these DBs can create a turnover. Guys like Harris, Jack Kelly who had an INT last week. It's going to be big. This defense is going to have to lead the way for them to get this upset. On Carmel's side, offensively, Mars, last week they ran for 294 yards on offense, running the football. That's just running the football. Teams have that as total yardage. They just ran the football with that, Mars. This offensive line has been really sensational. Again, they were my number one offensive line unit. The coaches and the players deserve a boatload of credit for the work that they've put in on that offensive line. And last time they played Suffern, you saw heavy doses of run, heavy doses of heavy sets, running the football, and I'm expecting to see that again to test the strength of Suffern. Can they hold up? And Josh Massey last week, it's really good. Again, 2 good games in a row. Last week, 119 yards and a touchdown. He's had over 100 yards in 2 straight. Dylan Shields, Nick Rosa-Forty also had rushing touchdowns. And then obviously Dahl running the ball. He had a rushing touchdown. So you have multiple guys that they're going to throw at you running the football. And you're going to see the heavy looks. You're going to see some spread looks. They're going to mix it up. And then the play action comes out of it, right? So to me, it's going to be extremely important for Carmel to play their game, right? Run the football, play action, and then get Dahl out on the edge. Get the wide receivers involved with some jet sweeps, the quick passing game, the play action passing game. To me, if they play their game and don't turn the ball over and don't have penalties, they're tough for any defense to stop. Defensively, I thought they had one hiccup the last time they played Suffern. Like I mentioned, that long touchdown. It's really important for them to prevent big plays because Suffern has that speed, Mars. We talked about it last time. So prevent those open field plays like Samson Joseph did on the other time. But outside of that, I thought they did a really good job winning at the point of attack against Suffern. And so that's got to be the game plan, right? 2 straight shutouts, Mars, avoiding big plays. Force Suffern to be an efficient passing football team. Get them into 2nd and 3rd and long. Again, I like Risco as a quarterback, but that's what you want them doing. You want them throwing the football a lot because your defensive front can get after the quarterback, and that's what forces turnovers, right? So that's got to be the game plan for them, Mars. What do you want to talk about on this one?
Yeah, I mean, this is just like another rematch of that was destined for destined to happen. I feel like just looking at last year's game, seeing how that went, and then seeing this just the regular season game between these two teams, it was just fate that they were going to meet again in the playoffs. And when you look at Suffern, the biggest thing that they have to do is try to make sure that the offensive line continues that momentum going forward. I feel like what any team in AA is going to be heavily reliant on their offensive line. And I gave Suffern's O-line a lot of props. I marked them as, I believe, my 3rd best offensive line in my Hog Molly list. And I feel like they deserve that spot because they do kind of move bodies out of the way, and they do give their backs a lot of opportunities to make big plays, and they need to do that against a good defense. To really, you have to, it's a really tough thing. I mean, Carmel's defense is rocking, and they're the top defense in AA for a reason. But the point is that as an offensive line, you now need to elevate yourself, elevate your ability to match this defensive line, match the defense in general. And obviously, Suffern's going to have to rely on guys like Samson Joseph, on Yang. Yep. You're going to have to rely on these big playmakers to make the plays to get you in the game. Defensively, it's going to be about creating creating negative plays, making sure that it's not going to be, they're playing on 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3, because you know what, Carmel can easily get those things. You have to force them to be in a 3rd and long situation to really make them put the pressure on them, and then you have to try to get your front to really cause some disruption, especially if they're forcing the pass, because Carmel's going to want to run the ball, force them out of the heavy looks, make them go into spread, and then try to use your athletes that you have in the secondary to make a play. Carmel has just been dominating up front. I mean, that we both had them as our number 1 offensive line, and we've been in discussions to say, are they the best offensive line in Section 1, right? And they make the great case for it. So when you look at Carmel's perspective, the all-line just has to keep doing what they're doing. They're dominating everyone up front, rushing the ball. There's no one that has been able to stop Carmel. Like you said, last week, 294 yards just running the ball. And they can hit you in so many different ways. It's just deadly. I feel like you have everybody on the skill position has the ability to run and run efficiently. You have obviously Massey, you have Shields, you have Dahl, you have all these guys that have the ability to run. So when you're looking at what Carmel wants to do, just do what you do best, run heavy looks, and then use the play action to really get your offense going. Right? I feel like that's the easiest method for them because they've been doing that all season long, and it's just been dominant. Defensively, I mean, it's really going to be about holding the line of scrimmage and forcing Suffern to pass. Right, forcing the pass and allow your D line to make
and they can
plays.
give up runs inside the tag. Just don't let them get to the outside because Suffern has that speed, and force them to do that all the way down the field. That's going to be, I think, the biggest thing. And the players to watch, Mars, I'm going to pick one from each side. Me is Massey. He's had 2 straight games, really impressive. This is not a big running back, but he does a really good job of running through contact, shows really nice balance. And he coming back and playing well, and now he's starting to hit his stride. Could be another domino for this offense that's going to be tough for Suffern to stop. And on the other side, it's Dylan Yang, right? On the defensive line, as a tight end, in moments like this, when you're an underdog, you need your best players to play at a high level. And Dylan Yang's going to have to be someone who's going to have to be a beast on both sides of the football is going to be big. So that's going to be huge. And I actually did a matchup preview on this one, and I'm going to be looking at Carmel's rush attack versus this Suffern defense. For this video, we're going to talk about Suffern's defense and Carmel's rush offense. And I'm going to start with Suffern. And for them to pull the upset, this unit is going to have to lead the way. And they like to be aggressive. They like to stunt with their linebackers. And they're going to have to win in that front 7 to stop this rush attack and cause some negative plays. And these guys make plays for this defense. You can see they got a 4-2, even when they come out in the spread. And Suffern wants to force Carmel to get into the spread. But even with the heavy looks, they're going to be aggressive and stunt linebackers. And you're going to see their ability to win using stunts, using their speed. They're going to try to run to the defense's right, and you can watch these defensive linemen, right? Watch these linebackers, right? They're going to stun on the outside. You're going to see this defensive tackle shoot the gap, this defensive end covering the B gap, and watch all of them try to win their one-on-one matchups. This guy, Dylan Yang, he's an absolute beast. And they're going to try to trap him. Again, really nice inside move by Krebs right there. You can see the linebacker screaming up the field, forcing the quarterback to give a give read. And even on this double team, he doesn't get moved. Right, and they're going to have to step up and make these kind of plays versus Carmel. Again, look at them cause a negative play in the run game. It's going to be huge. And you can see it. Arlington, like to bring the heavy looks. You're going to see much similar things that Arlington did, and you're going to see Carmel try to duplicate that, right? They're going to try to run a dive up the gut. Linebacker stunting through the A-gap. All right, this time you see a 4-3 look. They got 3 linebackers. When they come in a heavy look, they'll bring in an extra linebacker, but they're still going to stunt, right? Look at him. He shoots the gap so quick, forces a turnover, and these are the kind of negative plays they're going to have to cause. Because if they can force Carmel now into 2nd, 3rd, and long and get them into the spread looks, now it'll allow these 4 guys, these linebackers, to create some pressure, even when they don't get home. Watch Dylan Yang get his hands up. These guys are fast. They're athletic. Look at him up there. Look at him knock this ball into the air, forces a turnover. Again, that's caused by just being a good, smart football player. You don't get there, get your hands up. Well, let's look at Carmel. Again, you know you're going to get a heavy dose of run, and they can hurt you running the football with multiple backs, attacking the inside, attacking the outside, giving you condensed formations. I talked about it before. Look at this. 7 guys on the line, 3 guys in the backfield. I mean, there's no doubt that they're running the ball here. Look at all these guys, 3 yards from the line of scrimmage. It doesn't matter. They're going to attack right inside the end. Watch these offensive linemen. Watch these backs. Get a body on body. Look at him win at the point of attack. I mean, look at him win right here. Look at that seal right there. Look at him get that nice shot right there. Look at the kick out, causing that scene. And then a guy like Massey, it was great to see him back. You give him space like this, oh boy. Carmel's going to run downhill, bring in heavy sets, test your ability to ground and pound with them. Yeah, they'll go into gun, but still similar concept. Two tight ends. Again, even when you got 7 in the box, they trust their guys to beat your guys. You're going to see it. They're going to motion, try to get the defender's eyes looking the wrong way, run back. You're going to see linemen pulling. Again, watch them win at the point of attack. Watch these linemen. Boom. Really nice block right there. Look at them. They got a body on a body right here. Nice kick out. But this is what I like about these backs. Multiple guys. This lineman is going to miss him. Defender right in the hole. Watch this back. Good backs can make these guys miss. Look at him blow right by them. Like it was nothing. Heck, I got to go back one more time and watch it. These backs, even when a lineman screws up, they can make a play out of it. But look at them win at the point of attack right here. Look at these guys. Even with a missed block right there, back will help out the lineman. Look at that explosion. Another condensed formation. Again, when they're starting to wail on you, the defense is getting suckered in. Now they can hurt you to the outside. Play action, pass, and the outside runs. They're going to give an outside run to the wide receiver. Fake a dive. Watch these defenders get suckered in. This is a physical offense. Look at them fake. Look at these guys. Defense end trying to shoot the gap. Linebacker, outside linebacker stepping in. Leaves the opening right here. A one-on-one matchup with the wide receiver. And they got physical wide receivers. They're not easy to tackle in space. Look at them. That's 2 missed tackles for another big chunk play. Again, this rush attack versus Suffern's front 7 is going to be a huge indicator. Whoever wins that matchup is probably going to win the football game. All right, Mars, let's go to A now. And we're going to start with Mayapack, 6-2 at Rye, who's 9-0. And I got to say, this one to me is also interesting because, again, when I talked last week to coaches, the talk has been that is Mayapack the second best team in A. And we'll get to Mayapack, but I found it interesting because Rye, 9-0, right? They're undefeated. They've been pretty quiet. And it like we talked about earlier in the year, a lot of hype was with Rye, right? Because there was question marks on what is Somers going to look like, what is the rest of the league going to look like, and Rye felt like somebody that you can rely on, and a lot of people did. Now it feels like Rye is flying a little under the radar. It is crazy as a 9-0 team, and you're looking for teams that are going to compete with Somers. And I hear about Mayapack being Somers' biggest competition. So I'm interested to see this game and see how Rye comes out. But let's start with Mayapack. This is the first time, last week was the first time they were in the playoffs in 6 years, right? They had a victory at home versus Clarkstown North. I thought it was really important, especially after the last few years where, there wasn't been a lot of consistency in the program, right? So I thought last week was a big victory for them at home. And I actually think that they have a real chance in this game. I understand the conversations that those coaches say they're the second best team. And the reason why I think they have a chance in this one is because they can run the ball, they can stop the run, and they're relatively healthy. And when you look at Rye, they're not so healthy, right? So that's a pretty good thing to have for them. And to me, those things give them a real chance in this one. I'm going to start offensively. Last week, they ran the ball inside. They gave a lot of condensed formations, and Clarkstown North actually did a pretty solid job stopping it. So what did they do? They started running off tackle, and their running back, Koch, has been really, really important for this offense. Really, to me, the engine of this offense with that offensive line. He had 4 touchdowns last week. The offensive line, the tight ends, they bring in an extra offensive lineman. They're most dangerous in the I formation, Mars, because it opens up the play action pass, it opens up the run, and the defense has to respect both. And they completed some deep passes, especially last week. They threw up some 50-50 balls, and they trust those receivers to win them. One of them was to Gomez in the end zone, where he ripped the ball out of the defender's hands in a 50-50 touchdown. So they're giving, it all starts with the run, but they're hitting the big pass plays that are complementing, and they'll go into the spread like we talked about numerous times as well. But Rye is going to be aggressive, so the big thing is, can they contain the speed of Rye's defense? And usually when you play a speedy team, what you really do is you try to run right at them, right? So don't let them, use their lateral quickness on you. Defensively, I thought they did a really good job of stopping the run, like I mentioned before. The defensive line didn't get moved much at all, and those linebackers led by Perone was all over the field. I mean, it's really good because that defensive line, they don't move much and they take up blockers, and allows these linebackers to run free and make reads and attack the line of scrimmage, and they finished. And this time around, it's obviously got to stop this Rye rush attack and keep their quarterback Kovacs in the pocket. When I look at Rye, Mars, I mentioned they won 28-6 versus John Jay Cross River. They were playing the game. They had to move it to the next day because a transformer blew up. And to me, it's one of the quieter undefeated teams that I've ever heard in my life. And offensively, I'll start with them. I'm really interested to see the intensity that they come out in this one. This is obviously a big game for both teams, but for Rye, I'm interested to see how they play, because health-wise is obviously a concern. When you look at Whaling, they need him to play. We're not sure what he is. He didn't finish the game last week. Is he going to play? Is he not going to play? Is he going to be 100%? No one's 100%. But if Whaling does play, and I have so much respect for Whaling. He's a tremendous talent. If he's at least 70% in this game, this is the type of games that you need from, in my opinion, when he's healthy, the best player in the class, right? He needs to play big time in this one. And what I mean by that is you can't do it all alone, obviously, but you got to win those one-on-ones, right? With a linebacker in the hole or there's a defensive back in the hole, got to make that guy miss. You got to get that extra yard. You got to be leaning forward. You got to try to run through contact. They need him to be big in this one against a big physical front. And you might not see Tepedino, who's really important to them as a fullback, right? He's one of their best lead blockers. Don't know the status of him. And I thought this offensive line, I didn't love the way they handled the run blocking last week, Mars, against Cross River. They had some difficulty moving defenders. And so I want to see how they step up this time around, because they definitely have to block better and stay on their blocks against this big front. But if Whaling doesn't go, you got to have the other guys step up. Guys like Goldzer and Barford both had touchdowns last week receiving. And someone who has stepped up to me is the quarterback Kovacs. And he's going to be huge in this game, whether Whaling plays or not, because, again, they might have success running the ball, but it will not be consistent, because Mahopac has shown the ability to stop the run all season. And so their quarterback, they're going to have to make plays passing the football. And the quarterback Kovacs last week, 7 of 11, 140 yards, 3 touchdowns. He's going to have to be smart with the football. He's going to have to make some big-time throws, some big boy throws in this one, using the play action, using his legs. He's got to be the guy who has his, he's already a very talented player, but to me, I call this the come-out party, because he needs to, he might have to carry the load. And he's been doing it the last couple of weeks, and he's going to continue to do it this time around. Get the ball to guys to Surhoff, McComb, Barlett. It's going to be really important. These receivers are also going to have to make plays in space. They've done a pretty good job of getting open. When they catch the ball, they're going to have to make plays. It's not easy to get sustained drives against Mahopac's defense. You got to hit some chunk plays. That's going to be really important. Defensively, Mars, creating negative plays is going to be a big one. They forced 3 turnovers last week. You got to prevent those chunk plays. And this is an aggressive defense that likes to stunt. And when you stunt, you got to get home. You got to tackle and make the play. It's going to be extremely important. And also, you got to be aware of alignment. Mahopac likes to hit you with different personnels and different alignments. And like, for example, when they have a wide receiver that's close to the line of scrimmage, you might want to expect an out, right? And when you have receivers lining up wide, they like to come in on slants, right? So they like to hit you based on where your defenses line up. If you just line up in the same coverage, Mahopac is going to check and attack where you're not, right? So that's going to be really important. But what they really want to do is stop the run and get them in 2nd and 3rd and long, because if you can create that negative play, now you can come with the funky stuff. They like to send stunts. They like to get after the quarterback. They like to move around in coverage. That you have to do that by stopping the run first. That's going to be where you get there. And I want to see, again, those wide receivers at Mahopac have been making plays the last couple of weeks. It's up to this. Can the secondary win those 50-50 battles? Because they're going to have to put extra bodies at the line of scrimmage. Mark, so what do you want to talk about on this one?
Yeah, this is definitely an interesting game, and I agree with you. I feel like this is going to be, a tough one. I think it's going to be a close game, in my opinion. And I feel like the fact that a lot of coaches are looking like that Mahopac is the number 2 team should definitely make the Rye players want to outperform this game.
To make a statement.
To make a statement. I feel like that is something that is definitely. If I was a player, it would irk me. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like if you're an undefeated team, usually you should be a favorite. But I feel like right now it's 50-50. I feel like most coaches are actually picking Mayapack in this game against Rye, and Mayapack has definitely been improving. I feel like when you look at the run game, that's really what the cog of this offense is, right? The fact that they've been able to run efficiently behind this big offensive line, especially behind Koch, has been just impressive. I know that it's obviously when you look at the players of the weeks on Low HUD, it's hard to tell because you have so many votes that are skewing everything.
But he is player of the week, and he's been really good.
He deserves it. In my opinion,
he
does deserve it. You know, played very well last week. And he's, like I said, he's just been the cog, right? He's been the cog of this offense. This offensive line has just been moving bodies around. And I feel like when you look at this offense, it's going to be a lot of heavy looks, like a lot of I formation, force the run downhill, and then that's when the play actions opens up, and that's what allows the playbook to really become very dynamic. And I feel like when you look at this defense, it has to do with the defensive front. I mean, they have just been dominant, right? They have been taking a lot of blocks, but you have to give a lot of credit to Perrone. He has been all over the field. He's been really efficient in making tackles. He's been one-on-one with the back, and he's been just locking them down. And I feel like that is something that you definitely have to award the kid for. It's really hard to do that on a high school level, but he's been really impressive with that. And when you look at Rye, I mean, Rye has been very efficient because of the fact that they have a lot of weapons, but the biggest issue they have is their health concern, right? Because of the fact that they have more health problems compared to Mayapack, who's been very healthy. I feel like that's why a lot of coaches have been looking down at Rye, because you have to question whether or not Caden Wheeling is 100% and will he perform at 100% in this game.
Yeah, no one is, and if he's playing, no one's going to be crying spilled milk, and to me, this is going to be a big one. He needs to play. They need him to play at a high level.
I completely agree, and I feel like it's going to be to relieve Caden Wheeling of having to have a ultimate performance of like everything on his back. You have to have everybody else show up.
Yeah.
You have to. There has to be a collection of stars that come out for this game, and they all have to perform on a high level. This offensive line is going to have a tough time against this defensive front. They're going to have to win those one-on-one matchups and just get those guys out of the hole and give your backs some space. If you give him space, then you have to, I think that is a pretty good battle, right? Have Perrone go against some of these top tier backs, and it'll be a matchup for sure because Perrone's a good player. But the fact is, you have a lot of these backs, and let's see, will Perrone make every single tackle?
They can't leave linebackers unblocked like they did last week.
No, I know. I'm just saying, like the point is that you want to be able to win those one-on-one matchups so that you can now release linemen up to the second level, because Montalvo is going to be a guy that you're going to have to double him, right? You're going to have to double him. So the question is going to be which other guys can you one-on-one block to allow your linemen to go up to the second level.
Line, I didn't think they blocked great. I want to see if them step up this week.
Yeah.
They did not block great last week.
And at the end of the day, in my opinion, it's going to have to rely on Kovacs. He has to be efficient.
Yeah.
And he has been. And I think you have to applaud him for a lot of the injuries, and a lot of the offense is relying on him to really make plays.
Yeah.
The question is going to be, can he stay efficient against a good defense? And I feel like Mayapack's defensive front is really what scares a lot of every team they played against.
Yeah.
That's what they've been keying on. And I feel like that front's been so dominant that it's hard to do what you want to do when you're trying to play. And defensively, I mean, it's the same thing on the other side. This offensive line for Mayapack has been very good, and they've been big and moving bodies around. And obviously, Rye's going to stun. You have to capitalize on those stunts and force him to be in really tough situations in like third or long scenarios. So I feel like that's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, the players to watch. I'm actually going to pick two from Rye, and it's the linebackers, Garnett and Surhoff for Rye. Going to have to be extremely important. Again, Surhoff is more of the bump guy at the linebacker spot. He's the one who's going to thump you, but he does a good job of stunting. And Garnett is their explosive linebacker who moves around. These guys are going to have to dominate out there against a bigger team. They're going to have to step up. And for Mayapack, to me, it's Koch. He's been really, really strong for them running the football. I would imagine he's going to get a heavy workload this time around as well. The matchup I'm looking for, Mars, in this one, I'm actually looking at these Rye wide receivers versus the secondary of Mayapack, because that's going to be an important one as well. Let's go to the second A matchup, Mars. Pelham, 7-1 at Somers. That's 8-0. Pelham last week had their first playoff victory since 2010, so big moment for them. These teams have only played once, and Somers is 1-0 versus Pelham. But let's start with Pelham. They're 7-1. They had a win in overtime versus Brewster, 20-17. Offensively, again, I think they're going to play similar to last week, where you're going to mix of heavy looks and power running. And in important moments, Mars, they went to those heavy looks to try to win that football game, and it came through for them. So it's going to be really important for them to stay with their identity, which is some of that power running. But I do think passing the ball and attacking the edge of this defense, whether it's outside runs or play action pass or some of the spread passes, is what's going to be key in this one. Because, again, it was really hard for them to be successful at it last week, but it was, last week was rainy and windy and cold. I looked at the weather report for this Friday, and it's just going to be cold. So the precipitation and wind might not be as bad as it was last week, which will help them in the passing game. And so I look at their quarterback, Reen. And last week, 9-17, 112 yards and a touchdown. This is a guy who likes to buy time with his feet. He likes to extend plays. And he's going to be huge in this game to try to make some plays in the passing game. They got to protect the football. Don't turn the football over, Mars. If they lose the turnover battle, they're losing. There's no doubt about it. They're going to be losing this game if they don't win the turnover or break even on the turnover battle. But they got to get the ball out to guys like Mateo Johnson, Michael Romano, who last week made some nice catches for them, 3 catches, 60 yards, because they're going up against a dominant front. It's going to be hard to move, like I mentioned. You're going to see Daniel Fredbeck, both as a running back, quarterback, wide receiver, and run around. Josiah Campbell, who was really important, he had 72 yards in the touchdown. You're going to get a mix of those power running plays, but they got to make some plays in this passing game, and they're probably going to have to rely on this passing game to help win the football game. Penalties killed them last week. They had 9T on the screen. I mentioned that. You can't have these negative plays. It's going to be huge for this team. Offensively, they had 251 yards of offense. I do think the offensive line got beat up a little bit, so I'm interested to see that. Defensively, Mars, last week they allowed 211 yards, which is pretty good, right? They made some big-time plays in the red zone, and they're up against a balanced offensive attack in Somers, who could beat you multiple ways. But to me, the way that they could stop this offense is to create penetration with their defensive line. And a guy like Luke Greenmars was dominant. I know there was some mistakes, but he made some big-time plays last week, and he's been a big-time player for them. He had a sack last week. He made multiple plays on the goal line. This unit swarms to the football, and they're going to need to carry that. They have to rally to the football constantly and gang tackle this Somers offense. One-on-one tackles are not going to be successful. They have to stick with their identity, which is attacking with multiple heads, and they got to get some pressure on Somers' quarterback. Too often he has been back there with not getting touched, and Pelham has to create some of those quarterback hits. Is going to be big. When I look at Somers, Marcel, offensively, play their game, right? They're probably going up against the most physical defensive front or physical defense, swarming defense that they've had so far this season, or at least in the last 6 weeks. But you got to rely on the number one offensive line. This is the number one offensive line in the class for me. It was the same for you. And they got to contain guys like Green in this defensive line that likes to cause penetration. So this is going to be a nice little game where we see, can this offensive line dominate? And that they're going to have to rely on that and avoid negative plays. And obviously, quarterback Fitzsimons, last week, Mars, 10 for 10, right? He was a perfect 10 for 10, 187 yards. And then there's multiple guys who can hurt you. Mancuso, Matt Kapika had 2 touchdowns. Derek Marcus had a touchdown. Savino had a touchdown. We know about Ravi Das and those guys. What Somers likes to do is they'll mix it up. They'll go under center. They'll run some of the gut stuff, quick hitters up the middle. They'll hit you with the outside runs or off-tackle runs. And then comes the play action. They'll go into the play action and hit some either intermediate throws or deep ones, go into the spread, try to find the one-on-one. This is a team that can do multiple things. And I think they can keep Pelham's defense off balance. And that defense, last week, did give up some big plays in the passing game. So it's going to be big in this one. Defensively, Mars, this is the number one defense. And their front seven, guys like Fowler, Polito, Krause, they have been dominating all year. Last week, it was Kreco leading the charge. He had 11 tackles and a sack. Forced Pelham into second and third and longs. And if you can keep Reen in the pocket, Mars, force him to be a consistent passer in the pocket, because then good things are going to happen, because internally they can bring some pressure with this defensive line. Mars, what do you want to talk about on this one?
Yeah, this is definitely an interesting game. I'm definitely going to I think Somers definitely has the advantage when you look at this matchup, just because of the fact that I think Somers has just a lot on the offensive side. I mean, you look at the offensive line has been performing very well. You have the quarterback play has been also very good. I feel like this offensive mindset in this playbook has just been very dynamic, and I feel like the big thing I want to focus on is, how is Pelham's defense going to match up? And I feel like it has a lot to do with, making big time plays in the red zone, being efficient, and stopping any sort of big plays from happening. I mean, this offensive line for Somers is very dominant, and you really have to play tough against these guys. I mean, you have to play aggressive, and you have to try to match their size and really just by using your stunting ability, and you have to really hit home.
They do like to stunt too, especially on passing downs.
And like you said before, the gang tackling, these backs are too good to try to hope that one guy's going to make a tackle. The biggest thing that I noticed in Pelham in the previous weeks, and especially last week in their overtime victory, was that they were rallying to the ball, and it was causing backs from Brewster to really feel it. They have to make the backs feel every single tackle, so that it's a lot more difficult to just have some open space and feel like you're all good. You have to be able to close a lot of these big plays, and I feel like Pelham has the defensive ability to do that. But the question is going to be about whether the defensive front is going to match this dominant offensive line that Somers had. And offensively, it's going to be, you're going to have to be efficient in passing. You have to be dynamic. Like, Somers has the ability to do several things: run the ball and pass. Right? You have to then match them to do that on the offensive side. Defensively, that's their key. That's their best side of the ball. Defensively, Pelham is rocking and rolling. The question is whether the offense can match that same skill level.
And they can't have the penalties that they had last week. That's going to absolutely kill them. The players to watch for me, Mars, I'm looking at linemen. And then one on Pelham, Luke Green, who was really good last week, really important to that victory. I mentioned him quite a few times on this show. He's going to have to bring another dominant performance versus on both sides of that front versus that Somers is going to be real interesting. And Jake Polito, I got to talk about him. He's a guy who could be matched up against Luke Green on both sides of the football. Again, that to me is a game within a game. Those two guys going at it. Again, it's a team sport, but that matchup in particular is really interesting to me. And I actually did a matchup breakdown on this group, and it's focusing on Pelham's defense versus this Somers offense. We'll let the audience see. For this video, we're going to talk about Pelham's defense versus Somers' offense. I'm going to start with Pelham's defense. For them to pull off the upset, they need to dominate up front, and they need their defensive linemen and linebackers to cause penetration. And to me, it starts with stopping the run and winning their one-on-one matchups. They like to be aggressive. They like to stunt, send some linebackers at times, shoot some gaps. And so let's go over a couple plays. And this is, again, in the playoffs. You're going to see how this defensive line is explosive. They win their one-on-one matchups. They're going to have to do it again this week. This is a run play. You're going to see all the linemen stepping to the offense's left. And you have a double team. You're going to get some zone blocking. Again, not very complicated, but watch this defensive line. Watch these linebackers, how they explode. Look at them all exploding. They're all passing the line of scrimmage. Look at these linebackers. They're not waiting. Look at these guys win their one-on-ones. Right? Seems pretty simple. Zone read. Again, look at the play side. Look at the penetration. Look at the linebacker shooting the gap. They're going to have to be super aggressive. Again, when you get super aggressive defensive line, sometimes the trap works. And they're going to try to run the trap right here. Trap this guy, Luke Green. He's an absolute stud. Watch him fight off this trap. Look at him. Boom. Let him shake that off and make this play. This kid's a dominant player. He's going to have to be super dominant in this game. If they can stop the run, they will get Somers into second, third, and long if they can create negative plays, and that's when these guys want to feast and get after the quarterback. If they got guys who can win one-on-one matchup using their speed, they'll send linebackers to try to get extra pressure. Watch Luke Green. Look at him. He moves around. Watch him try to win his one-on-one right here. Look at him dip his shoulder. Look at him rip his arm through. Right? Really good job. You can see right here they're also winning, but I like the coverage. They try to run some crossers. They do a pretty good job of slowing the crossers down. The quarterback doesn't have time. He's got to move. Comes a sack. It's huge. Again, I talked about it. They can win with their front four without blitzing, but they'll also send stunts. Right? Third and long. Getting after the quarterback this time. Linebacker's going to come off the edge. Defensive end's going to shoot the gap. Confuses the O-line. Watch this hit right here. Boom. Watch him right there. Big time shot. Knocking the ball away. Well, let's go to Somers' offense. Balance attack. Can do multiple things that can beat you. Here he is under center. Right? Start with just running the football. They can hit you up the gut. They can hit you on the edges. And they really like running on the edges outside the C gap. Do a really good job of that. You're going to see a sweep. They're going to pull a tackle. They're going to pull a tight end. Watch them win at the point of attack. Look at that kick out. Look at that block right there. Now getting body on a body. Defender tries to reach his arm out. You're going to see the running back run with some strength and run through that tackle. Look at that. There's just bodies flying all over the place. Down the side, makes a guy miss at the end, scores a touchdown. Again, attacking the outside. Okay, here we go under center again. They're going to get a motion this time, right up the gut. So they can tack to the outside. They can tack you up the gut. Again, they don't have big hulking backs like Kaiser, but shifty guys. Look at that cut right there. Gets a big chunk play. Again, right up the middle. Team's thinking it could be a sweep. Right? Defensive line gets too much depth. Runs right underneath it. Look at them win at the point of attack. Here we go under center again. We're going to get motion again. So are they going to attack up the gut, or are they going to do a sweep? No, this time play action. They have a deadly play action. But watch what the motion does. Forces these safeties. They got to roll up. Safeties got to roll to the side. And you're going to watch. The play action works big time because the running attack is improving. You're going to see 2 outs. Deep out, short out. That open up. Watch the play action. Boom. Defender steps up. Linebackers all step up. This is what's going to create the opening. Good routes. Knows where he wants to go. Nice release. They can hurt you past the ball. So they can do that all under center, and they can go into the spread. If they go 2 by 2, they're going to motion to a 3 by 1. This guy Mancuso's been dominant. He's going to run a backside post. They actually have 2 defenders over there, but he wins with his speed. Quarterback knows where he wants to go with the ball. Watch it. Fitzsimons has had a heck of a year. There he is right there. He knows where to go, but this is what the most impressive. They're about to get some pressure. Look at him stand tall in the pocket. Knows where he wants to go and delivers it. Not afraid of the hit. Boom. Big time throw. All right, Mars, let's go to B. And again, we're trucking along here. A lot of playoff football. Let's start with Byram Hills, 5-3 at Nanuet, who's 7-1. This is a rematch from a Week 4 contest when Nanuet won 19-14. In my opinion, on the road when they won that game, really put Nanuet on the map, that victory. And they've been pretty humming along the way. But Byram Hills, let's start with them. They won 35-21 in the quarterfinals at Hen Hud. Offensively, Mars, we've talked about this quite a few times. This is the number 1 offense in points scored. And they're really explosive. But the last time they played Nanuet, again, I mentioned they scored 14 points. That's the lowest total they had all season. I mean, this is an offense that puts up major points, and that's the last time that they've been shut down under, I think, 20 points was that game. And so real interested to see how they respond to that. And I know, again, they had some success versus Nanuet running the football. I'm expecting to see a lot of Jaworski. He had a receiving touchdown last week. A lot of Jaworski, a lot of Rocco. Try to attack off tackle and out on the edge. But their quarterback, Cohen, I know he struggled a little bit against Nanuet. Last week, Mars, 15-21, 330 yards, and 5 touchdowns, including 3 touchdowns to Sean Siegel. Can this passing offense, get back on track? This is a quarterback, dual threat guy who likes to, roll out, get on the edge so that he can attack you with his arm or his legs. The question to me is, the last time they played on Mars, they could not finish drives. They were killed with penalties. They were not efficient. Can they finish drives around this time? Because I do think they'll be able to move the football. That's going to be the big question. Obviously, this offensive line versus the physical front of Nanuet is going to be extremely important. But to me, I think Byram Hills can move the ball. I think they can move the ball against anybody. Can they finish drives? Nanuet did a really good job against that last time. Defensively, Mars, this is where I'm a little concerned with Byram Hills. Their inconsistency. They've allowed 21-plus points 3 out of the last 4 games. And I thought last week they were able to create some negative plays. And negative plays aren't just tackle, to me, negative plays are tackles for loss, tackles for no gain, and creating turnovers, right? Those are negative plays, and when an offense has a penalty, that's a negative play and good for the defense. So they got to try to create some negative plays. And last week they had 3 sacks. And can they get Nanuet into some passing downs not ahead of the chains, right? Can you get him into 2nd and 8? Can you get him to 3rd and 7? That's going to be really important. I think that changes the game because they didn't do a bad job against the run last time, but the play action killed them. last time they played Nanuet. And so if you can get them behind the chains, the play action is not as efficient. So that's going to be really important. When I go to Nanuet, Mars, last week they won 28-14 versus Briarcliff Hamilton football program. Offensively, boy, it was good to see quarterback Frondy back, Mars. He is big for them. Huge on the play action game. He's huge when he does the rollouts and getting him out on the edge. It's going to be, he brings an important dynamic to this offense. So it's really good to see him back. And obviously running back James Moran, he had a 1 touchdown last week. I love his versatility. I've talked about him multiple times. A guy lines up in the eye. He can line up as a fullback. He can line up as a wing, as a wide receiver. They're going to have to move him around because he's going to dictate what the defense does, which will leave open opportunities for everybody else. Hollis Bryzan had 2 touchdowns last week. Brendan Bennett had a touchdown last week. You could see they'll attack you with multiple guys, but James Moran is the lead horse there. And he's going to have to be important in this one. Defensively, Mars, they did a really good, to me, it's really important to prevent big plays from Byram Hills. I thought the last time they played them, they did that. Although they did, Byram Hills hit off some big chunk plays that got called back because of penalty. So they got to prevent those big time plays. Byram Hills likes to run. But last time they played them, they were really good in the red zone. They're going to have to do that again because I do think Byram Hills is going to move the football. Last week, they forced turnovers. Lenosi had an INT. Naimanolo had an INT. This is a defense that can win multiple ways. Forcing turnovers and stopping the run is kind of the bread and butter of this defense, and winning on third down. That's going to be the game plan, right? Win on third down. Again, you can give up yards, but you got to tune it up, especially when you get near the red zone against this high-powered offense. Mars, what do you want to talk about on this one?
Yeah, I feel like the fact that this is a rematch of an already played game is definitely going to elevate the tension here. I mean, Byram Hills' offense has been really, really good. They've been very efficient, and like you said, the most interesting fact that their least efficient day was against Nanuet. So it's going to be interesting to see how they bounce back or what game plan they have going against Nanuet this time around. And the big question I have is going to be, how does this offensive line play against Nanuet's good defensive line? And I feel like it's going to be really, that's going to dictate how this game goes. I feel like last time they were very inefficient. They were, just couldn't finish any drive that they were in the red zone. So they have to really move bodies up front to allow your playmakers to have the space to make those big time plays to finish the drive. Defensively, it's going to be about this, can you stay consistent? Can you create negative plays and force Nanuet to not have the ability to do play action pass as efficiently as they did last time against you? Slow down the run, contain some of these key players like Frondy, and then you'll have a chance to match or get some more chances on the offense, because your offense is what really is you're like a high-powered offensive team, and your defense is really what's been the issue. But if your defense can give your offense more ability to score, then that'll give you a big time advantage here. I mean, Nanuet, when you look at them, Frondy is back, and that is something that should give a lot of Nanuet fans some relief. To see him back on the field and playing the way he was before is such a big deal for this team. But you don't only just have him, you have guys like James Moran who have been very efficient as well, and you really need to see these offensive weapons key in and make some big time plays. The offensive line has to play well, but really you have to give Frondy some space, give him the ability to be as dominant as he has been, and I think this offense should be okay. And defensively, like you said, prevent the big plays. You have to be efficient. Last time you played Byram, you stopped them from scoring in the red zone. If you can do that again, I mean, obviously stopping teams from scoring is important. Is the main goal. Is the main goal of a defense. But if you can be efficient, right, force them to be in those third and long plays, and then win those third downs before they even get to the red zone, it really starts to put pressure on this defense for Byram, and clearly that's been their biggest strength. And
anyone wants to play complementary football, right? They want to run the ball, control the clock, and play good defense. That is their identity. They do not want to get into a shootout or a running style gameplay, right? That's not what they want. And being in Nanuet on that grass field is an advantage. Nanuet seems to play pretty well at home. Players to watch for me, I'm looking at the quarterback Jared Cohen of Byram Hills. This is, again, real important football player for them. A guy who's a dual threat guy who can run and pass. He's going to have to be big in this one. And tight end and defensive back Nick Lenosi of Nanuet. I mean, this is a guy who had an INT last week against Byram. He had a touchdown reception on a nice play action. This is a guy who's going to be important blocking, play action, defending against this high-powered offense. So those are the guys I'm looking at. Let's go to the second game, Mars. The second semifinal game in B, Ardsley 6-2 at Pleasantville, who's 8-0. This is a rematch from just a couple weeks ago in Week 6, where Pleasantville won at Ardsley 19-18 in a very, very good game. Let's start with Ardsley, Mars. Last week, they won 23-20 on a game-winning field goal by James Weber versus Bronxville. And offensively, we'll start on that side. It looked ugly in the beginning. They were down 14-0 at halftime. The offense had penalties. They were not finishing drive. And it felt like, again, even the coaches talked about it, similar to Pleasantville, where the offense was getting some movement and then stalling out. And they were down 14-0. It felt like, oh, God, is this going to be the end? In the second half, the offensive line really stepped up, and they were starting to run the football with Phelan, who had 120 yards rushing, and 93 of it came in the second half, which opened up the passing game. Quarterback Ballarge, he was 9 of 21, 148 yards, and 2 touchdowns. The question I always have is, which offensive unit are we going to see, right? I mean, the inconsistency is it the first half offense or the second half offense? Because the second half offense had the offensive line dominating up front, them running the football and the play-action pass. And I do think the pass was working against Pleasantville the last time they played. Because running the football against Pleasantville, we talked about it multiple times, is not easy, and you can't do it consistently. But they have to stick with it. You have to be patient with it because it opens up the passing game, especially when they come out on trips, especially when they bring a tight end and do play action out of it. It really opens things up. And Ryan Watson is a guy who had a touchdown last week, has been an absolute beast this week. And I thought he dominated Pleasantville last time they played. He was a dominant figure in that game. And he's going to be a main focal point this time around, running and catching the football against those 5-man fronts. Pleasantville like to have those 5-man fronts. They like to send linebackers. They're aggressive. But another guy who can really step up this week, Connor Jones, their wide receiver. I mentioned Pleasantville likes to be very aggressive against the run, which will which leaves space for your wide receivers. Connor Jones is a guy who can make some big plays. He had a touchdown last week. This to me is they got to be patient with the running game. Do not bail on it if you struggle at first. But the passing game and the play action game could cause some big plays, especially with some of these receivers that they have. Defensively, this has been a really strong unit all year. I didn't think they played great last week. They gave up some big plays, both running and passing, and I do think they have to be better against the run this week. They're not going up against as potent as a passing attack as Bronxville, but Pleasantville's a team that can run the football. And so they weren't great against the run last week. Again, you got a lot of bulk up front in that front seven. These guys have to step up and cause some penetration. They got pushed around a little bit too much, especially in the first half. But they stepped up in the second half. They got negative plays. Dash had 2 sacks, Mars. They forced 4 turnovers. Ballarge, Phelan, Costas had a fumble recovery. Weber had an INT. The defense, although they were giving up yards, they stepped up and made negative plays, forcing turnovers to get their offense back on the field. For Pleasantville, Mars, last week, they won 14-7 versus Pearl River. Offensively, I mean, it was a bit of a struggle, right? And you want to see this offense and how this offensive line steps up this time around. And it was a struggle last week offensively, but if you rewatch the Ardsley game, they had some struggles in that game too, right? They had some struggles moving the ball consistently in that one. So I want to see how this offensive line steps up the second time around versus this Ardsley front. And this is another team, just stay, you want to stay patient with the running game. You got to give the ball to Cotter. You got to feed him, run behind this offensive line. Even though there'll be times where it's not successful, you have to keep this defense honest. But Daniel Picard, we have to talk about him. I mean, this guy he's a game wrecker for a defense. He is a Houdini out there. He's made some big-time plays over these last few weeks. And getting him the football as much as possible out on the edge and in the passing game is going to be huge in this one, because this is, again, he has the big play speed. He runs through contact, makes people miss in space. This is probably their best, most explosive weapon. The question I have is, Ardsley's going to game plan against Daniel Picard. Are the other guys going to step up? Right? Are the other guys going to step up? Is their quarterback LaCapria, is he going to be efficient? Because you could see the offense is very different when he's efficient. Right? He's such an important piece to this offense when he's efficient, when he takes what the defense gives him, when he steps into his throw, and he's accurate and confident. This offense is different. Let's just call it what it is. And you know it's going to be hard to run consistently. This passing attack is going to have to make some plays. And they might have to use Daniel Picard. They got to give him the ball a lot, but they can use him also as a decoy because defenses focus in on him, which will open up things for everybody else. Defensively, Mars, this is the number one defense in B. Last week, the defense forced 2 safeties. They only gave up 1 touchdown. This has been a real strong unit. They're aggressive. They like, to sense stunts. They like to have a lot of guys near the line of scrimmage. To me, they have to do a better job versus trips. They got to do a better job versus trips. And if you look at the Ardsley game, the tight ends killed them, right? Watson killed them. When they line up as a tight end, and I know it gives you a run read feel to it, but the safeties and the linebackers have to be aware of the play action. They cannot let Watson get a free release into the secondary. I mean, you're asking for a disaster. So the big thing to me is that's their style, but the secondary has to be a little bit more aggressive to the passing game and don't just bail out to the run. Mars, before I get to you, special teams is another big thing I wanted to talk about. Last time they played, it was a big-time advantage for Pleasantville. I mean, McCarthy had 2 field goals. Picard had the punt return for a touchdown. I mean, special teams is a huge part in this game. And Pleasantville, to me, has a pretty strong special teams unit. Kicking the ball, returning it. They have a pretty strong unit. That could be something that dictates this game too, Mars. What do you want to talk about on this one?
Yeah, this is definitely going to be, in my opinion, probably the biggest matchup of B, right, in my opinion. I feel like this game was so close in the regular season that I feel like everybody's watching this one again. As if you're going to pick, and not to rag on any way Byron, but if you're picking a game to watch for B, I feel like this is the game that everyone's watching, because I feel like when you look at the power of both these teams, right? I feel like a lot of coaches are favoring whoever wins as being the top team that is favored for the section title, and you really have to applaud both teams for that. I feel like they're both coached well. They both have the ability, to bounce back after tough matchups that they've had. I mean, when you look at Ardsley, they came back from a 14-0 deficit. Right, that's a tough thing to do against a good Bronxville team.
Yep.
So I feel like when you look at Ardsley, the big thing for them is going to be about offensive line play. Right, if their offensive line is strong up front and opens up lanes for their key players, I mean, that's going to be the big thing. And obviously Ryan Watson is going to be a guy to look out for.
Yeah.
I mean, he was dominant last time against Pleasantville, and I can guarantee you he'll be a dude that's going to be on Pleasantville's radar. I mean, I feel like why wouldn't he be? He literally was like a one-man show last time with all the big plays he was making, but he's not a one-man show, because Ardsley has a lot of weapons that can make big plays, and the big thing for them is going to be, can they establish the pass? That's going to be the big question. Consistently. And I feel like that's kind of like my key key to watch for this game is this offensive pass attack. Can they establish a pass consistently and really be efficient, and not turning the ball over, not having big penalties. That's going to be my big thing to watch. And for Pleasantville, I mean, their offense has struggled, and I feel like the big thing for them is going to be really going back to the basics, looking at what you have that's dominant. You have Daniel Picard, who's a dominant player. What can you do with him? Can you put him into space? Can you see if he can make a big play? And like you said before, can you use him as a decoy? And Daniel Picard can't be the only weapon that you have that makes big plays. It has to be a collective effort, and it has to be from guys like Cotter. It has to be from Aiden Picard. It has to be from like Don Matika. It has to be from Michael LaCapria. Has to make plays, because you have this offensive line that mainly is young. Right, most of the guys that are starting here are young guys, but you do have some veteran presence as well, and they need to win up front. They need to give Cotter some space. Right, if you give him space, he's proven that he can make plays, and he runs downhill like a very tough back.
But to me, I think it's got to be someone outside those two.
You have to. You're
gonna get these. They're gonna get a lot of touches.
Yeah.
But there's got to be somebody else besides
I
those
agree.
two.
You have young guys on this team that have to make plays. I mean, there is a lot of young presence here. You guys have guys that play in the slot like Eric Coleman, a guy who had big time plays against like Hen Hud, who you need him the most, and he showed up, and who did have big plays in Ardsley as well. So the point is, against Ardsley, against Pearl River, you had big plays by these guys, and they have to show up. They have to, or
Yeah.
if you don't, then you're gonna put all your money down on Daniel Picard to
Making a
bail you
magician
out.
play, and again, it can only
he
happen.
is a magical player.
He
But
is.
the
He's a
point
Houdini. I think he's Houdini.
The point is, you can't rely on Daniel Picard alone. You have to have a collective effort by everybody. And defensively, I mean, like you said, they're the number one defense right now, and I feel like the biggest issue that you could see from last time, they have to make contact with Watson.
Oh,
they
yes.
have to contact
Way
him. You
too
have
many
to
free
slow
releases.
him down. And I feel like that was one of the biggest issues I saw, because it looked like he was coming untouched, doing whatever route he wanted to do, not being slowed down, and that was a big problem for them. And especially in those trip sets that they like to run with the tight end, with Watson to the side of the trips.
Yeah.
How are you going to react to that? And
Yes.
it's interesting to see how they are going to manage that formation, and are they going to get some contact on Watson? And that's going to be the big key. But like you said, special teams for Pleasantville has been very good all year,
Yeah.
and John McCarthy has been fantastic. And
Yes,
I'm glad
he's
to
been a
see that
weapon.
he's been looked at by a lot of by a lot of schools, and he deserves it. I feel like he's just been very efficient.
Yeah.
Very rarely do you see him miss, right? And one
He's
thing
had
I'll
some big kicks.
he has some big kicks and big time moments,
Yep.
and then you have obviously Daniel Picard's making plays on the special teams as well. But you have to applaud these units for that's what gives Pleasantville an edge in a lot of games, is the special teams unit. So it should be interesting to see what
And
happens.
to me, that's what the play that sparked Pleasantville's comeback versus Ardsley. That punt return for a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to kick field goals when the drive stall. Those were big moments. The player to watch for me, again, I'll pick one from each side. I also did a matchup video on this one. But Connor Jones, we talk about Watson, right? We talk about Ballars. We talk about Phelan. Connor Jones is a receiver who can beat man coverage with his speed. He's a slippery guy. This is another guy who they might try to target if they get that one-on-one coverage, especially backside of the trips or towards the trips and finding a hole in zones. That's someone to keep an eye on. And I got to talk about Daniel Picard. He's a guy I'm looking for on Pleasantville. He has made some big-time plays for Pleasantville on both sides of, I could say, in each unit. Special teams, offense, defense. He had an INT at the goal line versus Ardsley last time they played. This is a guy who, again, we talked about his talent. He's a very talented young man. He's going to have to play big in probably Pleasantville's biggest game in the last few years. So the matchup on this one, I looked at Ardsley's defensive line and that defensive front seven and why they're difficult to move and run against. And I also looked at Pleasantville's offense and maybe some things they could do to try to open things up a little bit. For this video, we're going to talk about Ardsley's defense versus Pleasantville's offense. And we'll start with Ardsley's defense, and it's going to be a big time moment for them to stop this rush attack. And there's a lot of girth up front. They're hard to run inside consistently. And I know Pleasantville likes to run the ball. They'll attack inside. They'll attack outside. This Ardsley front's going to have to play strong. And we're going to show they can win up front. They got a lot of girth, maybe not a lot of speed, especially up front, but they're hard to move. Right? And they do a good job controlling linemen. You're going to see they're going to motion a pitch sweep into the boundary. Watch them win up front. Right, look at that move by the defensive tackle. Look at them get out there and make this play. Again, they're not the most explosive. Look at that short distance. They can make plays. And you're going to see, trying to run inside is tough against the girth inside. Look at these big boys up front. These linebackers don't wait. They attack. They're going to run power. Quarterback's going to keep it. Try to run inside. And even though they get a nice initial push on this D tackle, look at this defensive end. Look at him control his blocker. You're going to see the backside defensive tackle making a move inside. This looks initially open. Again, watch these guys close. Look, controlling their blockers, disengaging, making the play. With all that girth inside, teams are going to try to attack outside, right? They're going to try to run a sweep to the outside. They rely on these linebackers to cover a lot of ground. One guy, Ryan Watson, one of the best players, he's a big-time player, and he's a guy who can do that. He shows that range, right? So, again, these defensive ends, big, maybe not be the fastest. Look at him hand it. He's going to beat him to the corner. It's a foot race. House linebacker's got to show his range. Can he get out there? And look at that. Look at him fight out there. Look at him get out there and make this play. Again. Step up. Let him get out there and make this play. Let's go to Pleasantville's offense. And we know they like to run the ball. They'll run the ball inside. They'll run it off tackle. They'll run it out on the edge. Running the football is extremely important. But you know they're going to try to take away Cotter. A guy like Daniel Picard is going to have to make big-time plays for them, and he is one of their most explosive athletes, probably their most dangerous weapon. Call him Houdini. He's a magician out there. Right? Here he is out there. They're going to motion him in, and they're going to pitch sweep it to him. And he's the type of guy who can make a play that looks like it's going nowhere and make it into a big one. There he goes, motions. Pitch it out to him. Again, defense does a really good job. Look at him fight to get to the outside. They got one defender, the other defender out there. But this guy's explosive. Look at the little fake. Look at him beat him to the outside. Okay. Then look at the spin move. He takes a play that probably should have been a loss. Ends up being 13 yards on third down. Big time play. Now, I think they got to give Daniel a lot of opportunities running and catching the ball, but you can also use him as a decoy. It might open up other players and open up inside runs. It won't be easy, but the misdirection might be able to work. And this is one of those examples of him being a decoy. This time they're going to motion, they're going to fake the pitch to him, counter back inside. Watch the defenders react to the fake pitch. Again, he could be a weapon just as a decoy. There's the fake, handing it back inside. All these linebackers bailed. The outside guys bailed for the sweep. Here comes the counter back. Look at that explosive play. Guy like Cotter hitting the hole hard. There's Daniel out to the left. Again, one-on-one matchup. Look at the space they have because they're afraid of his speed. Just hike it and throw it to him. That's what they do. And let him work. Throw it to him. Okay. Right? Expect him one-on-one. He'll get this first down. Again, this is a kid who can make small plays into huge ones. There's two missed tackles. Look at the spin right there. Cut all the way across the field. And the magician pulling a rabbit out of his hat right there. Finally, this is what's going to be big in this one. Coming out, throwing the football with consistency. 2v2. Okay, you can see Daniel's right here in the slot. They're actually going to double him. And yeah, this young man is talented enough to beat a double team, but they're going to go press man. If you look backside, it's one-on-one coverage. You want whoever playing quarterback to read that. Right? Can you read that? Can you find the proper guy to go to and can deliver an accurate, on-time football? Talk about LaCapria, look, Picard. Whoever's playing the quarterback, whoever's throwing the ball. And you're going to see the routes. Fades on the outside, outs on the inside. Okay? They're going to attack Daniel Picard even though he's getting doubled because they trust that he can win that. And he does. But watch the backside open up. Right? Watch the one-on-one matches open up. Can you give these guys an opportunity? Can these guys make a play for you? Daniel does a really good job on that inside release. But this is what I do like. Standing tough in the pocket. Delivering an accurate ball. Look at him step up. Again, he's not open yet. Right? This guy's undercut, but he knows where he wants to go with it. He's confident in his receiver. Step up, make an accurate throw. And that he does. Good catch, too. Can Pleasantville do that consistently enough? It's going to be huge this weekend. All right, Mars, let's go to the last league. We'll go to C, and then we'll go to give our game picks. First one up, Croton Harmon, 2-6 at Valhalla, who's 5-3. This is a rematch from week 1, so it's been a while. Valhalla won 34-16. But let's start with Croton Harmon, Mars. Last week, they won 20-8 versus Woodlands. This is their first playoff berth since 2010, so a really nice moment for this program getting into the playoffs. I know everyone's going to look at the record, 2-6, but they won the games they needed to win to get here, right? So that's really important. Offensively, this offense is going to have to create some explosive plays. Valhalla's defense has given up some big plays in both the passing and run game, and this offense is going to have to put up some points. I mean, they've only scored 20 points once. I think they're going to have more if they're going to have a chance for the upset here. And you're going to see some under center. You're going to see some play action, some spread. I think they're going to have to rely on the passing game a lot. And guys like Jacob Jones, a sophomore, he's got to be smart with the ball, take what the defense gives you. I'm looking to see if this offensive line, can they give good pass protection? Because they struggled a little bit with that the last couple of weeks. So they're going to have to, pass protect well, and I'm interested to see if they can get a run game going. Guys with like Ben Reed and Matt Stinger, can they move the ball? Because that would really help their defense out a lot if they can control the time of possession. Defensively, can they prevent the big plays in the passing game? That is big. They're going up against, again, an offense that will hit you with the short stuff and try to get those guys running in space, but they really want to hit you with the deep ball. They're trying to sucker you in. To me, this defense, you have to force Valhalla to be patient. right? Because they like to take chances, and there'll be opportunities to turn the ball over for your defense because they like to be aggressive. So to me, you can give up the short stuff, but you got to come up and tackle. Don't let these stud receivers break tackles and create big chunk plays out of that. Take away the deep stuff. Force them to go short. Come up and make the tackle. And obviously, you have to rely on your front seven to hold up in the running game because you need that secondary to really bail out for the pass, unfortunately. But for Valhalla, listen, they won 50-24 versus Hastings. Offensively, Mars, they have scored 20-plus points 5 out of the last 6 games. They've had 3 games of scoring over 40 points. So this is a very explosive offense. But I liked last week that they established a run game. They did a pretty good job of running the football last week. Obviously, the heaviest burden is on their quarterback, Dawson, who's a stud player for them, using his arm and his legs. And they're going to mix, like I talked about, the quick passing game with the deep shots. But they like to take chances, and they like to hit the deep ball and see if your secondary can run with them. Guys like Potate, Basiaka, I call him Basiaka, Big Play Butcher, who had a touchdown pass last week. They want to get those skill guys in space. They want to get you in one-on-one coverage and see if you can run with them because not a lot of teams can. But I do want to see this offensive line. Can they protect up front? Because, again, you can't change the way you attack. Dawson likes to take chances, right? So there will be potential turnovers in this one, but try to limit those turnovers and keep your offense out on the field. I think Croton Harmon is going to try to stunt, try to bring some pressure to try to force the issue on this one. Defensively, Mars, the defense for Valhalla has taken kind of a bit of a step back. They've allowed 24-plus points in 5 straight games, but what I do like is that they have been forcing turnovers. So can they force some turnovers and get their offense more possessions? Because the more possessions that this Valhalla offense has, the much likely higher chance that they're going to hit a big play and score a touchdown. Mars, what do you want to talk about on this one?
Yeah, this game is interesting because, I mean, you look at Valhalla, I feel like they are kind of seen as a major favorite for C. And when you look at Croton Harmon to start off, I feel like their offense will need to be explosive. They need to make big plays, but it's gonna, in my opinion, have to rely on the passing game in order for them to be, to try to match this Valhalla offense that's just been so dominant. The offensive line is going to be my key to watch for Croton Harmon because of the fact that they need to be efficient and. But based on how they play, it will help establish the run and also protect for the pass. I mean, they're going to be the major cogs in this offense. They have to be. They have to be efficient, and they have to make sure that they give their offense the ability to try to find the open lane here. When you look at Valhalla, I feel like their offense has just been so good and so dominant that it's going to be like a shootout. No matter what. And so Croton Harmon needs to try to slow down some of these key players, right? And try to win those one-on-one matchups and try to, like you said, stop the deep throws. Yeah. Right? I know it's at the end of the day, like you're thinking to yourself, well, how can a quarterback throw these bombs? Well, Dawson can do that, right? So I think, honestly, to slow down this offense, you have to take away the big throw and really make them be methodical. Yes. Go drive all the way down the field. Yep. Yeah, make them go all the way down the field and drive and score. Because at the end of the day, Dawson likes to take those gambles. So at the end, and he's good enough to do that. So when you look at what Valhalla has to do, they need to try to get their best players, their speed out in open space, right? And I think that you can win those one-on-one matchups. And Dawson needs to have time to throw. So that offensive line needs to be efficient, and they need to open the running lanes. But major thing they have to do is give Dawson time because he can really cut up any defense.
Yeah. To me, the players to watch, I'm looking at Jack Sullivan, offensive lineman, linebacker. I think he actually had a rushing touchdown last week, which is always a lineman's dream. This is a big player for them on both sides of the ball, whether it's running, run blocking, pass blocking, making plays at the linebacker spot is big for them. And on the other side, I'm looking at their quarterback, Jacob Jones, on Croton Harmon. Again, for them to have a chance for the upset, he's going to have to be a big part of this game and make some big-time throws in this one and be smart with the football. Let's go to the last matchup, Mars. Our last C matchup, Albertus Magnus 5-3 at Dobbs Ferry, who's 8-0. This is a Week 4 rematch where Dobbs Ferry won 49-21. And let's start with Albertus Magnus. Last week, Mars, they won 43-6 versus Rhinebeck. This offense has been humming. They've scored, 27-plus points in 4 straight, 40-plus points in 2 straight. This offensive line deserves a lot of credit. Again, you can't put up these major points without offensive line play at a solid, strong level. But I mean, they have a two-man horse that's creating a lot of plays for this offense, and Gamey Savor has been sensational this year. And last week, he had 187 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns. This is a guy who, and I think they're going to try to attack the edge and the C gaps with this guy. They got to get him out in space because he is probably their fastest player. And to me, their most versatile guy is Mike LaRusso, who had 102 yards rushing, 66 yards receiving, and a touchdown. Love the way these two guys are playing. These are their two best weapons. And LaRusso is a guy you can move around in multiple spots. To me, I think the defense is going to be bailing out to stop Savor. LaRusso might have an opportunity to make some plays because last time they played Dobbs Ferry, I thought they had some success throwing the ball and attacking the edge. So play action is going to be big. And the question to me is, can they play clean? I mean, this is a team that's had a lot of penalties. Can they play a clean game? Defensively, this is what to me can give them an opportunity. They've allowed 8 points or less in 3 straight games. And to me, you have to stop this potent rush attack. You can't stop it. I say stop, but you just got to try to slow it down. You have to create some penetration. It all starts with stopping their fullback. But can they force Dobbs Ferry to pass the ball more than 6 times, Mars? That to me is the question, because if Dobbs Ferry has more than 6 pass attempts, I think Albertus Magnus is probably in a good situation. So that's going to be a big question to me. Can they stop or slow down this potent rush attack and get Dobbs Ferry behind the chains? They're going to give up yards. Dobbs Ferry's offense is too good. But can they force a negative play on one time? Right? Can they get a 2nd and 12? Can they get a 3rd down and 10 and try to win that down and get their offense an extra possession? When I look at Dobbs Ferry, Mars, I mean, they won, 57-12 or 52-12 versus Haldane. I mean, they put up 50 points. Offensively, they've scored 30-plus points in 7 games. And they're not a spread, throw the ball all over the place offense. This is winning by running the football. And you got to give big credit to guy Robert Sanzo. 202 all-purpose yards last week, 3 touchdowns. One of them was on a punt return. They have multiple guys who can hurt you. Jabari Marsland, Brandon Holman, who had 2 touchdowns last week. They have multiple guys that they can throw at you and hurt you. And obviously they have that stud fullback, Brian Dan, both as a runner and a blocker. This is a guy who does a really good job as a lead blocker. Really pushes people around and can block in space, but he is that grinded out runner. I think he's going to have a big game in this one because that's, I think, where they can hurt Albertus Magnus with a power running game. And how about their quarterback, Javonte Williams? He's been really efficient. They don't ask him to throw a lot, but he has been really solid when they ask him to throw off play action. He's made some big plays. But offensive line-wise, Mars, got to give kudos to the players, the coaches. These guys have been absolute studs. Again, this was my number 1 offensive line out of the BCD schools when we did our rating last time. So to me, that offensive line deserves a lot of credit. Defensively, they have to be a little worried about the pass defense. They have given up some big plays in the passing game, especially last time they played them, but they forced INTs. Last week, AJ Delvito, Sammy Georgia Dacus, both had INTs. If this defense can just prevent big plays and possibly force a couple turnovers, I do think that they're going to have a good opportunity to win this football game. I mean, that's how dominant their offense is, as long as defensively, which has at times been dominant as well. But I do think they're going to try to attack the edges on this one, Mars. What do you want to talk about?
Yeah, when you look at this game, I feel like, Albertus Magnus has been pretty solid. Their offensive line has been good, and I feel like they do have playmakers that can get them some points, but they have to really try to get those guys into space and see if they can make a play. And I feel like it's going to be really tough to slow down Dobbs Ferry's offense, but the defense really needs to try to force a negative play of some kind to at least force it, or at least try to force Dobbs Ferry to throw it some more, right? And you kind of mentioned, if they throw it, force them to throw it more than 6 times, and
yes,
that means they're in some pretty solid shape here. But Dobbs Ferry has just been dominant offensively. Like I said, 30-plus points in 7 games? I feel like that's just it's unheard of. I mean, and it's not some sort of spread you out passing game either. It's just straight up, we're going to run you over. We're going to run the ball as much as possible, and you have so many ways to beat you in that way, in that scheme. But Brian Dan, man, he's just been, the guy, right? And he's been like a dominant force for some time now, and I definitely got to give him a lot of kudos for just how good he is on both the run and also in blocking, because a lot of backs aren't really like that. But he was a former lineman, so it makes sense, But that's just a dream of every lineman to be start off as a hog, then transfer to be a star back, and now you're one of the best backs in C. It's incredible. So this offense needs to just keep rocking. This O-line needs to just keep opening up lanes for playmakers. And defensively, I mean, it's really going to be about preventing the big plays.
Yeah.
I think Dobbs Ferry is in a very good spot right now. Their offense has just been dominating all these teams.
The players to watch for me, Robert Sanzo of Dobbs Ferry. This is a guy who's been probably their most explosive player, and he makes a lot of plays for them out in space, and that's someone to look for. And obviously Mike LaRusso for Albertus Magnus, the most versatile guy. Really like watching him play. To me, a matchup. I didn't do a matchup video for this. There wasn't enough film that I liked to cut to show the audience, but I'm looking at this Albertus Magnus pass attack versus the Dobbs Ferry secondary. To me, if Albertus Magnus can make some big plays, I think that's when they're going to have the best chance. You ready for the game picks, Mars?
Yeah, I'm ready to roll.
I know we had a nice long show, but playoff football's here, Mars.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start with AA. Arlington at New Rochelle. I'm going to switch it up. I want to hear your answers first, Mars. I always give my answers first to the last game. What do you think is going to happen in this one?
Well, this is definitely it's hard to say which is the most interesting game.
I know, there's good ones.
There's a lot of good ones, and I feel like this one's interesting because of the fact that, New Rochelle has had some struggles this year, and I feel like the biggest formula to really cause some disruption for them is going to be a big front, right? Especially from Arlington's offensive side. Their offensive line has been very good, and defensively, New Rochelle has usually always been the ones that can outmuscle and outspeed their opponents. But what happens if you face off against an offensive line that is a big crew of dudes that can really move you out of the way and have some skill players to really make some big plays? So this is extremely interesting, this game.
Yeah.
And I feel like Arlington's offense has been rocking. They're just creating these big time scoring points. They have 21 plus points in the past 5 games that they've won, and they're really finally coming alive to be that second tiered offense I was mentioning. And with that being said, I'm going to pick Arlington here. I think this is going to be a big upset. I mean, I feel like one of the things that you mentioned in earlier in the show is that, when was Arlington in the playoffs, right? They have been a consistent contender.
They've won
in AA.
Yeah,
they've been for the past 5 years. They've been
4 times out of the last 6 years they've been in the semifinals.
That's what I'm saying.
And again, Morano and that staff have elevated that program.
Exactly.
They're not even the biggest school anymore, right? They used to be the biggest school in AA, but they're one of the biggest schools. But now that they're constantly
constantly
got to be there.
They've been a contender, and I feel like this is their chance because they have a defense that's been keeping teams beneath 14 points a game, and their offense has been very consistent. And I feel like it's going to depend on the offensive line. I think that New Rochelle has some injury issues right now. At quarterback, you don't know who's playing right now, and you also don't know how healthy the rest of the guys are. Yeah. So I think with all that happening, Arlington's going to have a big game to show out. I'm picking Arlington.
Can I just say this? I think the coaching staff in New Rochelle has done a pretty darn good job morphing their identity over the last few weeks. Mm-hmm. They wanted to be attack the edges all the time, probably throw the football a bunch. They didn't really have power football game, and then an injury happens. They had to make a quick switch. And they kind of focused in on the power running game with Chris Tuck. And that brings a new dynamic to their offense. But the injury concerns again, we don't know the status. Obviously, if I knew the status, it would make me feel a lot better. Luzzie's a really important player. But even if the backup quarterback comes in, they have the skill guys who can win out in space. And that's going to be the big thing. If New Rochelle gets a play or two, long touchdown runs, that's tough for Arlington, right? They have to force New Rochelle to be methodical down the field. The other side of the ball is Arlington has the power up front to control this game. They do. We have seen it now the last 5 weeks. They have won the trench battle. And that, to me, is the formula to win, beating most teams. But I think that really is the formula for New Rochelle as well. I have a lot of respect for the New Rochelle program, the players. This is in New Rochelle, and I'm not going to lie, I would be excited to see New Rochelle back in the championship versus a Carmel, and we'll get to that game next. But I'm going to go with the upset as well. I think Arlington is really playing good football on both sides of the ball. And the injury, I think New Rochelle's a little bit beat up. I think this is going to be another really close game. back and forth type of game. It does concern me to see if a young quarterback can go on the road and win this type of game, Mars. But I am going to go with Arlington because I do think they're going to control the fronts and control time possession. Let's go to the next one. Suffern at Carmel, Mars. What do you got in this one? Suffern trying to get revenge. This is in Carmel again. This is a tough matchup.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that there are some major stakes here, right? Last time that Suffern's won a playoff game
last week.
They
did it last week.
But before that, it was 2011, right? So this is kind of like that. Can they match? Or can they beat where they were? Get to the next seed, get to the section championship. Last year they didn't have one. We consider them to be the section champs because they beat all the teams, the top teams. But the question is, can you beat another top team?
This is official now.
This is like the official section playoffs. So can you do that again? And I feel like offensive line, they have to play out.
Step up,
they have to step up big time, and their playmakers like Samson Joseph, like Dylan Yang, they have to be big here. They have to make big plays, and they have to be consistent in this game. Defensively, it's going to be a very tough thing to go against Carmel's offense, who's been rocking and rolling. But this Carmel offensive line is considered the top tier for a reason, right? They can move people, they can set their guys up for the run, and then when you think that they're just going to run all day long, the play action starts opening up, and that's when Carmel becomes extremely dangerous. Everything's going well for Carmel right now, and I'm going to go with Carmel. I think this is their year. I think they have all of the pieces fitting for them. I feel like they just have just so many weapons that can make big plays. They're a run-heavy offense, but boy, they can hurt you in a lot of different ways. And the defense, you have to applaud the defense for being able to just shut down teams as well as they have. The front has just been dominant offensively and defensively. I'm going to go Carmel. Again,
mentally, the second time you play a team, it's hard to beat a team twice in a season. No matter what the game and the matchup is. So to me, that advantage goes to Suffern. What I say, Carmel, again, has been playing at the highest level. But again, when you get into games like this, you got to seal the deal, right? You got to play at a high level, get to the next game. They have the talent to do it, right? Especially in the trenches on the offensive and defensive fronts. They have been as the most dominant team in AA. And they can, like you said, beat you multiple ways. Running the football with multiple people. It's not just a one-man show. They have multiple guys who can run the ball. Dahl as the play action and getting out on the edge. And these receivers getting jet sweeps and stuff like that. It makes this offense hard to stop. And defensively, they're the number one defense. They've done such a good job of preventing big plays and forcing turnovers and making it a grind for an offense to move the ball. And when I look at Suffern, how about the last few years at Suffern? These last 3 or so years, Suffern has been really impressive, this program. The coaches and the players deserve a lot of credit as well. And this defense has speed, and they got to use that speed, and they have to create some negative plays. The question I have, and I am going to go with Carmel, is can Suffern's offense create some big plays, some big chunk plays, because it's not going to be easy to just consistently drive the ball versus this defense. They got to create some big plays. They had one last time, but only 39 yards of offense outside of that long Samson Joseph run. Right, so they have to get some more consistency out of their offense. I don't think they're going to do enough. I'm going to go with Carmel. Let's go to A, Mars. Mayapack at Rye. This one is another real interesting one. I want to hear where you're going to go because, again, when you talk around the league, it's surprising some of the answers you hear. I want to hear what you have to say.
Well, when you look at this game, I feel like if it wasn't going to be the Arlington-New Rochelle game, I feel like this is the other most intriguing game because you look at both these teams, I feel like they, Rye has the story of they're the most underrated, undefeated team, in the entire section. I've ever heard of a team go undefeated and not be a favorite, right? And then you look at Mayapack, who has been having momentum and probably one of the most healthiest teams of all of everyone.
The Final Four. Because Pelham lost their best player, Shelton. Yeah. Somers is pretty healthy now, but Polito's missed a few weeks.
Yeah,
right? They've had some
over the entirety of the season.
Rye, we've seen Whalen miss a couple.
The entirety of the season, Mayapack's probably been one of the most healthy teams.
Which is a big advantage.
Which is a big advantage to have. And I feel like this offensive line, defensive line for Mayapack has just been consistently dominant, right? They've been able to move people out of the way. Defensively, they've been causing so much disruption that allows for second-level defenders to make a lot of plays, right?
Yeah.
And you have to like the way that guys like Perone have been playing because they've been very consistent. Whenever you need him to play, really good, he's showing up. And then you look at Rye, like the big question you have for them is health, is Caden Willing healthy enough to make a big impact in this game? And are there other guys who are banged up, right? They've been having a lot of these really showdowns against good defenses and good offenses where it's been aggressive and a lot of guys can beat up at the end of the day. So the question for them is going to be, will you have all your guys healthy and ready to go? And when I look at all these factors, I'm going to go with Mayapack. Mayapack has the health that allows them to keep their best guys on the field consistently. They're able to run the ball because that's the main cog. We all know that is what allows this offense to move, right? Having guys like Koch be able to play the way he has been playing.
And it's opened up the big pass plays.
Yes, the offensive line to be moving bodies with a good protection for the pass. It opens up the play action, right? The run is what's the most important thing for Mayapack, and they've been doing it efficiently against almost everybody. The only games they haven't been able to were Somers and John Jay, right?
Yeah.
And those are 2 games they lost. So the question is going to be, can they do that again? And I think they can. I think Rye had struggled against the run with running the ball with John Jay, against John Jay, and I feel like Mayapack is a bigger front than John Jay. So I think Mayapack has the advantage with health and the ability to run. I'm going to go with Mayapack. Yeah,
and listen, you make a lot of good points, and your thoughts are actually not uncommon with what I've heard. Mm-hmm. People had, and that's the reason they say Mayapack is probably the second best team over Rye, and why some of them are picking Mayapack over Rye. To me, I'm not going to bring up the health. I know I brought it up earlier. It is a factor. But to me, health is not the biggest question for Rye. I'm looking at this offensive line. I didn't think they played great versus John Jay. And this offensive line, to me, they were my number 2 unit. And so I want to see if this offensive line rebounds and blocks at a high level this time around. They're going to need to get some semblance of running the football. And they're going to need to run the football. So to me, that is the biggest question mark. Can those guys step up? Because I do think they have the talent to do it. And they should be extra, and again, you should be motivated no matter. There should be extra motivation in this game. But for Rye, all the people talking past Rye as if they're not Somers' biggest competition or a legitimate threat to win the title, to me, it would add a little extra motivation in this game for me. I do want to see if Caden Whaling's playing, but even if it's not, Kovacs is going to have to be big and with these skill guys. And can they stop the Mayapack rush attack? I picked Rye before the season to win it all, so I am going to go with Rye. I have to go with Rye, and I do think Rye is going to have to step up, and they will step up. Probably going to be a close one. Would not surprise me if Mayapack wins off the factors that you said. But I just have a feeling Rye's going to make a couple plays. I think Rye's going to step up and be extra motivated and win this one. Let's go to the other one. Pelham at Somers, Mars. Can Pelham continue the Cinderella story? It would be probably the biggest upset of the year if they could do this.
When you look at Pelham, it's their defense that's been the driving force, right? It's kept them in every single game, right? And you look at the last game against Brewster, it started to look like it was going to get bad, right? It started to look like it was going to be a big loss. But then the defense showed up.
They made some huge plays by the goal line, man.
Plays and allowed for Pelham to come back and then win in overtime, which is such a big deal for them. So, you do definitely have to applaud them for all that. But I'm going Somers. Somers has a lot of ability on the offense and defensive side. When you look at Somers, a lot of people were questioning, will this program be stable? We
talked about it last
week. Will they take a step back? Will they be the same Somers that's been dominant after losing a long-time coach?
Yes.
And clearly they've proven that they are, right? And whether you're looking at this current team or looking at their Pop Warner that's been dominating.
I think everyone's still undefeated. It's crazy.
They've all been dominating. So the question is going to be, will they continue that? And I think they will. This offensive line has been very good, and they've been getting better as the season progresses. The first game they played against Mayapack, it looked like, they were rusty. It was a rusty.
There were a lot of questions.
Yep. How are they going to be the rest of the season? And they proven that don't worry about us. We'll be fine. And they have been dominating every opponent all the way up to this point. For the most part. So the question is going to be, will they do that again? And my answer is yes. And I think that the offensive line, this rush attack, this pass attack has been great. Defense has been dominant. I'm going Somers.
Listen, I have to take a little bit of a victory lap. Before the season started, I was a big Pelham supporter. They were my dark horse team. And next week we'll get into my preseason predictions and how right and wrong I was. But again, I thought the defensive unit was going to be good, and they have proven that to be the case. This is a unit that swarms. I think this is probably the most physical defense Somers has seen in the last 6 weeks. So this is going to be a defensive front and a defense overall that's really going to hit Somers probably for the first time in a while. So that to me is an interesting aspect. The question I have is, can Pelham run the ball against Somers, which I think they will struggle because no one's been able to run consistently, but can they attack the edges of this defense with some runs and with passing the ball? That's going to be the question, because this Somers defense has been really good at each level. And on Somers' side, like you said, they've been humming on both sides of the ball. Sometimes they rely on one unit more than the other, but this defense has been really consistent all season long. While the offense has tried to figure itself out and has gotten better as the season gone along, this defense is playing at a high level the whole season. I think Somers can just do a little bit more than what Pelham can do, especially now. Missing Shelton is a big one for Pelham. They could just do a little bit more offensively. I think both defenses are strong, but I don't think Pelham's defense is going to hold up. I do think the Cinderella story comes to an end. I'm picking Somers. Let's go to B-Mars. Byram Hills and Nanuet. Who you got and why?
Well, this is definitely a interesting rematch from earlier in the season. And, interestingly enough, with Byram Hills as one of the top offense in B, they struggled the most against Nanuet. And I think that's going to be kind of a similar story that we tell this week, because the big issue I have for this is Byram Hills' defense still struggles, right? And I feel like they need to step up big time in order to keep this, in order to bring their offense back on the field and have the more chances to score. Nanuet, defensively and offensively, has been very good. All season long, defensively, they've just been shutting teams down, and they shut down Byram from scoring quite often. And then with Frandy being back, and it looks like he's back to his old self.
Played well last week.
Played very well. I feel like that gives Nanuet a big advantage on the offense. And with that being said, I think I'm going to go with Nanuet. I think Nanuet's front gives them a big advantage on the offensive side. And the way their offensive scheme works, the fact that they have the ability to just wear defenses down, and Byram's defense has yet to prove to me that they can be consistent and stand up to a big front, a good offense, and shut them down, right? They haven't proved to me they could do that. And Nanuet has just too much weapons on both sides of the ball. I think they have the advantage of going Nanuet.
Again, really interesting. Again, this is a rematch where Nanuet won the first time. I always think it's really hard to beat a team twice in one season. Byram Hill's offense is extremely explosive, but I agree with you on the defense. They just haven't been consistent enough to me. They've given up too many big plays. If Byram Hills can force a couple turnovers and give their offense extra possession, they have a real good chance of winning. I think that the offense does move, and I do think they score more. They're going to score over 20, but I do think Nanuet scores one more extra time. I feel like this is going to be a 27-20 type of game. I'm going to go with Nanuet on that. All right, Mars, you're not going to pick this one, but I want you, do you have any last thoughts on Ardsley at Pleasantville?
Yeah, I mean, this is a showdown. And, you know what, maybe I'll sound like a homer, but I think whoever wins this game, I think has the best chance of winning the section title, in my opinion. I feel like these are the top two teams in B. I mean, Nanuet, I have to give a lot of credit to Nanuet. I just feel like Ardsley has been playing against the top talent, and the fact that they beat Nanuet gives you that sense that they could be considered one of the best teams, right? Pleasantville is obviously undefeated,
yes,
right? So you have to give them that as being the best team in B currently. But I think whoever wins this game will have that advantage going forward, and they're evenly matched. They have a lot of similar traits. The big question is going to be the fronts, right? I feel like we talked about that earlier in the show, so should be interesting.
This is I agree with you. This is a very interesting game. Pleasantville's defense has been really good all year. They've been pretty consistent, and this is the number one defense in points allowed, and I do think the defense is going to play well. They're going to make it tough on Ardsley. The question to me is offensively, right? Will they be able to run the ball? Which Ardsley defensive front is going to be showing up? The one that struggled a little bit against Bronxville, or the one that's been pretty dominant all season long, including the game against Pleasantville versus the run? Those are all questions that run through my mind. This Ardsley team is super talented, but sometimes I just feel they're just not consistent. But I mentioned this a few times already. Pleasantville won last time at Ardsley, and it is hard to beat a team twice. And I also picked Ardsley to win it all before the season, so I have to go Ardsley in this one. I am going to go with Ardsley. I do think you're going to see the more consistent team show up, at least for most of this game. I think there's going to be another really close one. Both teams play pretty physical defense, so it'll be a low-scoring game in my opinion. I think Carsley's going to win this one. I think they're going to pull the upset. All right, let's go to see Mars Croton-Harmon at Valhalla. What do you got and why?
Well, I feel like when you look at this game, I think you have the clear advantage of Valhalla, right? Valhalla has this explosiveness, they have the speed, they have the ability to really just win in open space. So I think that when you look at this game, I'm going to have to go with Valhalla. I feel like they have just too much guns here. They have too many weapons that can make big plays. And Dawson is just a very good player, especially if you give him time. And I really think it's going to depend on the offensive line being able to create lanes for their backs, but giving Dawson the ability to make the big play. And I think they will quite often here. I think Valhalla has a big advantage. I'm going with them.
The thing about Croton-Harmon is, can the offense score enough? They just haven't proven to me to do it consistent enough to keep pace with this Valhalla offense. I'm going to go with Valhalla as well. I think their quarterback can make a few big-time plays. I do like the physicality Croton-Harmon can play with. Defensively, I do think they're going to stun and cause pressure, but I don't know if this offense can keep up with the defense. With Valhalla's offense, excuse me. Let's go to the last one, Mars. Albertus Magnus at Dobbs Ferry. Albertus Magnus has been explosive and playing solid defense, but Dobbs Ferry's been dominant, Mars. Who do you got?
Well, Albertus Magnus does have, some offensively. They've been consistent. The offensive line's been playing well. They have weapons. So you look at the offense, they have the ability to score points. The question is going to be, can the defense slow down this rush attack from Dobbs Ferry? And the question is going to be whether they create some negative plays. Dobbs Ferry has proven that they don't have to pass to beat you, right? And I don't know if Albertus Magnus can stop them from running the ball. Right? I feel like they do have some decent size, but Dobbs Ferry has so many weapons that can hurt you in the run. And the offensive line has been dominant. So you guys, and then on top of that, you just have a guy like Brian Dan, who's just been all around block, run, you name it, he'll do it, right? And I feel like that just gives them the advantage. So I'm going to go with Dobbs Ferry. I feel like Dobbs Ferry is that team to beat. They are, in my opinion, the most dangerous team in C. So I feel like they have the biggest advantage here. I'm going Dobbs Ferry.
Again, this is all about rematches and beating a team twice in one season. Albertus Magnus, they've done a pretty solid job. The kids and the coaches deserve a lot of credit coming back into C, being extremely competitive, being back into the playoffs. But I agree with you. I'm going Dobbs Ferry. They've just been too good this year. They have been too consistent. They've run the ball. They move people. They control the time of possession. They've hit big plays. They can hurt you multiple ways. And defensively, they've been strong enough. I mean, at times they've been dominant, and at times they've given up some plays. But I do think they're going to play a well-rounded game in this one. I think they're going to win it. All right, that was our show. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. I know a lot of football talked about tonight, but I hope you guys have a football-filled weekend, and we'll see you all very soon.